Hey, good morning, everyone. I think we have almost 20 participants already. So I'm going to start today's webinar. I'm Anh from Austrian. Thank you all for joining today's webinar hosted by Water Stewardship Vietnam with the support of Austrian Vietnam. So as we all know, water is a vital resource to any country or community's development, but it seems not enough is known about the sustainable and ethical use of water. So I think especially in Vietnam, even though we are blessed with abundant water resources, little is known about how to manage water resources efficiently. So we do know that we have to cherish our water resources and be mindful about how we use them. But how do we do so exactly? So lucky for us, we have the amazing team at Water Stewardship Asia Pacific and Water Stewardship Vietnam, whose mission is to protect and enhance the natural environment through water stewardship to achieve a water secure world for all. So without further ado, allow me to introduce our speakers for today's webinar. We have Ms. Megan McLeod, the Program Director at Water Stewardship Asia Pacific. Ms. Megan has been leading projects and training since the launch of the International Water Stewardship Standard in 2014. Next up, we have Mr. Feni Widahuditama, the Regional Coordinator of Global Water Partnership of Southeast Asia. Mr. Feni is an Indonesian national with over 20 years in designing and implementing sustainable development goals-focused programs. He has extensive international experience, a broad network, and deep knowledge of the social, economic, and cultural context of Southeast Asia. We are also joined by Mr. Marcus Clemmer, Chairman cum General Manager at Planet Zero.Earth. He is specialized in sewage sludge incineration, solid waste management, and wastewater. He was involved in the world's largest sewage sludge incineration project, Tea Park in Hong Kong. Last but not least, we have Ms. Hec Huy, the project manager from Water Stewardship Vietnam. The project is funded by the Australian government to assist Vietnamese businesses in building a water-secure future. Ms. Hec Huy is a sustainability consultant in Vietnam with expertise in capacity building for youth innovation and catchment analysis. I will now leave it to Ms. Hec to moderate this webinar, and I wish everyone an insightful and engaging session. Ms. Hec, the platform is yours.
Thank you, Sue, for introducing us, and welcome everyone for today's webinar. The webinar is part of our project Water Stewardship Vietnam, which is supported by Australia government through the Australia Water Partnership Program. So Megan, could you share the screen? I will go through the agenda. So for today's webinar, we will talk a little bit about the framework, what water stewardship means. And then we'll go through a little bit of case studies from Australia, stories from Indonesia. We'll have also Mr. Marcus to talk a little bit about his experience, the business side in Vietnam, and also the relationship between water and carbon. And then I will talk a little bit about the project. So starting, so maybe many of you might wonder what water stewardship means, but like, why do we need water stewardship? So Megan, maybe may you introduce us a little bit about water stewardship, so everyone can have a little bit of an idea.
Yes, thank you, Han, and thank you, Auscham, for hosting this webinar to share our knowledge and information about the project and water stewardship. So water is, as we all know, one of our most precious resources. Businesses can't operate People can't live without, and environments can't survive without good quality and availability of water. We all rely upon it. And with this understanding, we need to manage it well and effectively and sustainability for all water users. So water stewardship has been developed as a concept, and I'll give you some more information about the background to that. But it builds on decades of thinking and understanding about integrated water resource management that recognises the social, cultural, environmental and economic value of water. The formal definition of water stewardship is the use of water that is socially and culturally equitable, environmentally sustainable and economically beneficial, that's achieved through a stakeholder inclusive process that includes both site and catchment-based actions. It's consistent with integrated water resource management, as I mentioned, in understanding and recognising the environmental, social and economic value of water, but is different to integrated water resource management in that it's focused at the user side of water. So where integrated water resource management is focused at the government or governance level, we really are aiming to engage water users in those shared goals and vision towards water sustainability. And the framework, the water stewardship framework, is outlined in the International Water Stewardship Standard, provides just that, a process and a framework for water users to engage in and participate in sustainable and responsible water management. It guides water users through a 5-step process to understand the site and catchment-based water challenges, risks and opportunities, to help sites to develop a water strategy and plan to address those priority sites and catchment risks, challenges and opportunities, to implement the plan, evaluate and communicate and collaborate with other stakeholders. The standard takes, based on this shared understanding, water stewardship enables water users to work together to identify and achieve common goals for sustainable water management and water security. And it aims to achieve 5 broad sustainable outcomes at both a site and catchment level: good water governance, sustainable water balance, good water quality, important water related areas, and safe water sanitation and hygiene for all. As you can see there, it is a broad framework that covers a wide range of water values, not just water efficiency and availability, but all of those important outcomes and aspects to support a sustainable water resource for everybody. Looking a bit more at the approach, traditional engineering and regulatory water management approaches have seen and managed water as an input that needs to be managed and maximised efficiently to own independent and individual gains, with water users and users acting in independent and isolated silos. This can lead to over abstraction and utilisation and pollution of the resource. And so through water stewardship and integrated water resource management, we recognise the integrated and interrelated nature of water, and where water users and stakeholders operate in an integrated and interdependent way. No longer are environmental impacts and community health and well-being seen as externalities to business performance, but through the process of water stewardship, businesses can start to participate and help lead, indeed lead communities towards a shared vision and goal of social, ecological and economic sustainability. Why was water stewardship formed and developed? It started in Australia in response to the devastating millennium drought, which extended from 2001 to 2009. Over that period, an extended drought, businesses faced extreme and unprecedented water-related challenges, both through physical water-related challenges, lack of access to water and availability of water, which impacted on business continuity, but also regulatory risks. It prompted widespread regulatory change and water restrictions throughout Southeast Australia, and reputational risks for businesses. Some businesses in Victoria, major water users, were named and shamed on the front of the newspaper as being major water users, while communities and people were on severe water restrictions. So while Australia is known for its floods and droughts, its extremes, this millennium drought was unprecedented, and nothing had prepared businesses and water users for that experience. And so in response, businesses and industry, and indeed other stakeholders, community and government stakeholders, were looking for a way to better understand and be able to prepare for future drought and challenges and risks. As we know, with climate change as well, those risks and challenges are being exacerbated. But at this time, in response to the millennium drought, those stakeholders formed an alliance, and the interest in that development became global. In North America, they were trying to engage businesses and industries in improved water quality around the Great Lakes. In Africa, they were facing water and sanitation challenges and water quality challenges around health and sanitation. And while those challenges are different in the different locations and countries, they all had a common goal to better understand and manage water resources. And the International Alliance for Water Stewardship was formed, and the International Water Stewardship Standard was developed and formally released in 2014. Referring back to the previous slide, and with that context, as you can see, with water is very locally specific in that each location or catchment faces different water challenges and risks that it needs to address, and a prescriptive standard that sets water quality targets or water use targets couldn't possibly be relevant in every location in the world. What the water stewardship standard provides, yes, Anne?
Yeah. Like with the examples, I mean, like the background of water stewardship, but it's a kind of like a big framework, right? Do you have any examples from Australia where water stewardship has been implemented?
Yes. So just to finish on this one, since the launch of the International Standard and Framework, it has been formally adopted by a range of different water users and sites across 64 countries worldwide. Drawing on one of those examples and lessons, in Renmark in South Australia, in response to the drought, the community faced major challenges, and the drought indeed affected the survival of the community, which was highly reliant on irrigation, and there were a number of exits of people leaving the community from the drought as they could not afford to water and irrigate their plants and sites. And while the drought and from the drought, while that brought many challenges and widespread reforms through the Murray-Darling Basin Plan, it also presented an opportunity for the community. And the community set a bold vision to lead and underpin the social, economic and environmental sustainability for the long term, and implemented a range of initiatives to ensure that security and viability of not just the irrigators, but the community itself. They implemented a range of initiatives, one being to partner with the Commonwealth Environmental Water Holder to use the irrigation infrastructure to deliver environmental water to the wetlands surrounding the region. This had a range of ecological benefits, obviously for the region, but it also served a dual purpose for the irrigation network with the water used to flush the pipes, had an economic benefit with the environmental water holder becoming a customer of the irrigation trust, and achieving those win-win-wins for the environment and for the irrigation community. It has also led to increased ecotourism to the region, and the Renmark community is recognised as leaders in the Murray-Darling Basin now, and demonstrating those social, ecological and economic benefits and outcomes.
Can you show me the slide before? I just have a questions about the Murray-Darling. So the Murray-Darling in Australia is a very big basin. So how does it work with like Renmark as the town, as I understood? How the Renmark worked in that large basin?
Yeah, so when we talk about catchment collaboration and engagement in water stewardship, we understand that a water catchment or basin can cover a large area, but the framework works to identify local stakeholders and community and actors who can work together and collaborate to address local water challenges and have improved impacts within their area of influence. So Renmark is based at the lower end of the Murray-Darling Basin. The Murray-Darling Basin covers 5 states across Southeast Australia. And you can see there the GIS image of just the town and the irrigation district. So the water stewardship process focuses on their sphere of influence being the Renmark town, but all the social, ecological and environmental areas and values and benefits within that local area, and how the different water users and actors can work together and collaborate. So the irrigating members are engaged in good water stewardship and good on-farm practices with efficient irrigation practices. The Renmark Irrigation Trust is delivering water to the irrigators, but now also through that agreement for the environment. The Renmark Paringa Council is engaged in the program and building education and engagement within the community to ensure or help towards achieving a more resilient town and community, but within their local sphere of influence. So we don't need to get too overwhelmed by the scale when we talk about catchments, but taking that landscape approach towards local water stewardship.
Yeah, thank you very much, Megan.
Just quickly, just some of the other benefits of it. As I said, it's being taken up by hundreds of sites and companies around the world. Indeed, corporations are using water stewardship to help inform their water management strategies. So where they manage a large portfolio of sites and suppliers, they're using water stewardship to help identify those strategic priorities and help them assess where they need to focus their investments and time and resources. So it helps improve cost and resource efficiency as well.
Yes, thank you, Megan, for your sharing. If anyone has any questions, feel free to type your questions in the chat box. I'll turn to Mr. Fanny from Water Stewardship Indonesia. So Megan just shared a little bit about the case study in Australia. So Indonesia was kind of like similar development status with Vietnam. Mr. Fanny, can you share with us a little bit about the water stewardship initiatives in Indonesia? And so how that sort of supports kind of water management in Indonesia so far?
Yeah, thank you, Miss Han. Yeah, hi everyone. So if we are talking about water stewardship in Indonesia, first we need to also understand that in Indonesia, although we have people think that we have abundant source of water, but same with the other country, maybe in Vietnam, of course, yeah, with Australia, with other countries in Southeast Asia, I think we have the same condition. First is that it is a problem that when we have too much water, that means flood, and if it's too little, then we have drought. But the funny thing is that we always have those two in the past, until now even. And then I also discussed with some of the key stakeholders from the government, and they also say that it is not only too much, too little, but it's also too dirty. So we have a lot of water, but then if it's not usable, it's not clean, then we cannot use it. But the other problem is also we are too ignorant, and the last thing is too busy. So with all this kind of state of the water in the country, so we need to do something together. Now, uh, uh, we have a lot of challenges. We have a lot of challenges, but then we understand that there is a growing risk, not only growing risk. There is also a growing. If we are talking about the private companies, we are also they are also expecting a growing consumer demand. There is also a growing expectation because we people are now expect everyone also to do everything in an environmental sustainability manner. And then, of course, there is, because of all of this growing risk, growing demand, growing expectation. So the government is also thinks that they need to do something. And then there is this growing rule of rule of the game of how we should manage the water. So this is where water stewardship principle is very important, and this is also in line with the principle that the government is already implemented, which is IWRM, Integrated Water Resources Management. So this starting from this risk, growing demand, growing expectation, and growing rule of the game, then there is this need of the water stewardship, and the principle of water stewardship that has already been explained by Megan in the previous talk. I think that would be very much helpful, because now with the principle of water stewardship and the principle IWM, we can try to how do you say, to create this joint action. So this is where the water stewardship Indonesia then comes in. Yeah. So in Indonesia, we are one of the main go-to organization when we are talking water stewardship. So we have, because we want to bring everybody together to address the problem, the challenges together. So we have several key flagship, and we are focusing on water governance, how to bring everybody to improve the water governance. And then we also try to put a portal of information in one place, which we call Catman Knowledge Hub. And then the last one is also we help to facilitate the water stewardship performance improvement through active collaboration through with the key stakeholders, of course, through joint action and so on. So this is what we are trying to do right now in Indonesia through Water Stewardship Indonesia. And Water Stewardship Indonesia is actually also under the network of Water Stewardship Australia and Pacific, the same like Water Stewardship Vietnam. Yeah. So yes, I will talk about this Indonesia Water Coalition also because right now aside from being the director of the Indonesia Water Stewardship, right now I'm also the interim chair of Indonesia Water Coalition. So there are several key players in Indonesia that is they have a big concern on how we can support the decision makers to manage the water. So we there are 9 organizations comes together and we form this establish this Indonesia Water Coalition. So these 9 organizations are the Nature Conservancy of Indonesia, and then we have GWP Southeast Asia, which happens also. I'm leading the organization, and then Water Stewardship Indonesia, Coca-Cola, Danone, Unilever, and then Heineken Indonesia, Nestle, L'Oreal. We come together as a coalition, and we try to do some joint action. So we try to focus on the certain priority basin, where all of our members is operating, and we are trying to also to have a joint action where we can help to reduce all this the growing risk, and also to address this growing expectation and the growing rule of the game by the government. So this is a coalition that would like to do something together, because we know with all the risk that we have, with all the expectation, with all the rule of the game that we have now, it is impossible for us to do something only by ourselves, and that's why this Indonesia Water Coalition is established. So one of the most important, if you go to the next slide, sorry. One of the important work right now that we are doing is we are now trying to uh, realize or to materialize the catchment knowledge hub as a joint action, because with the catchment knowledge hub, then we will be able to see who's doing what, where, and when, and then what is the challenges in the every priority basin, and then what we can do to help as a coalition. So this is something that is important, and this is coming from one of the working group of the Indonesia Water Coalition, because we have three working group within the coalition. We have the knowledge management working group. This is where the catchment knowledge hub is being developed right now, and then we have the program management and advocacy, where we are trying to also again come together and try to put together a perspective paper that we can share with the decision makers, so in order to influence on how to improve the water governance. And then of course the communication, because we want to communicate and we want to bring other potential members of for the coalition to come together. So this is something that I can share in Indonesia. We also learn from what happened in another country in 2011. If we remember, there is a mega flood in Thailand, and it helped. So it had a negative impact, not only for the country itself as a whole, but especially for the people who works in the private companies, who had to close down their operation because of the flood. So we have to learn from our crisis, and hopefully by learning from other countries experience, from Vietnam, from Australia, we will be able also through this coalition, we will be able to move forward in a most effective way. So I will stop there. Miss Han, thank you very much.
Thank you, Mas Fanny. So just to clarify, the benefits for the business to join, can you repeat about clarify a little bit more about the benefits that the business joining the coalition? What I understood is there's like the knowledge hub where they can share lessons from water management of the region, but is there kind of like something that helps them in the operation more like specifically so far? Any kind of other benefits to the businesses that join this coalition?
Yeah, so one of the main benefit is that the growing risk that they are facing. So some of the members of the coalition, they are operating in the same basin. Now they understand that if the usual way is to, of course, focus on their site operational side, try to deal with all the risks maybe nearby, but then they understand that there is also a shared risk. Right, I call it shared risk because this is happening in the catchment, and whatever is happening in the catchment, for example, in the ultimate water source, something is happening in the water source, which is up in the upstream, it will have impact. But of course, they understand that this cannot be addressed by themselves. So that is why there is need to be a how do you say collaboration between all the key stakeholders in the area, not only between the companies but also the other key stakeholders like the community, the government, the local government. So this is where the idea of the coalition then comes up, that we need to come together. We need to identify the shared risk and then try to identify what we can do from each of the members, and then try also to take others have others also to join forces. So that is one of the benefits. So the growing risk that I mentioned in the beginning, this can be at least addressed not alone but together, because then you have a bigger impact if you are doing something together.
Yeah, so that responds to one of the question I see in the Q&A about how the water stewardship framework would complement the existing framework such as IWRM. So yeah, so that's something I can hear from your discussion, is that it does complement. So with this framework, we are trying to have this bottom-up approach where businesses at site level. So you see that Renmark, I guess, like from Megan sharing, the town, the small town, like the smaller town in like the big basin, but they can manage water within the boundary. And it support the kind of management of the basin, but it's a smaller scale with like kind of smaller numbers of stakeholders within that boundary. And the other one is more like top down, where you kind of look at the whole basin as a whole and trying to manage like a very large area of water. There's the questions about IWRM. So there's another questions for Megan, I guess, about the reaction of the towns of Renmark when they adopted water stewardship, if they were consulted. Yeah, so Megan, do you want to take it up?
Yeah, so through the process, a number of key wider stakeholders were consulted in development of their vision and strategy for Renmark, being the state government, the natural resource management government body or department, the Commonwealth Environmental Water Holder. So a number of broader stakeholders were consulted in their plan and their initiatives that they implemented. Since initiation of water stewardship and those initiatives that they've implemented there, it has received a lot of attention and recognition from other communities in the basin and indeed internationally. So they've had a number of visitors and delegations, both from neighbouring communities, from other irrigation trusts and districts. They've shared their experience and their work, across the basin and with international visitors as well. So as it's another benefit of the water stewardship approach is demonstrating that leadership, being able to back it up by real evidence and outcomes, and promoting that sort of action and approach to other regions for them to apply in their own circumstances.
Yes, thank you, Megan and Ms. Fanny. I do have questions coming from the business side. Is because there's so many ESGs, like standards and environment standards. So like businesses in Vietnam and many other countries has so many standards that they need to abide by. So what is kind of the difference between water stewardship standards and other environmental standards?
Yeah, thank you. So the main difference is the for the water stewardship we apply a catchment approach. We call it a landscape based approach. So we look at the whole catchment and then see from there what is it that what are the risks, and then how we can identify the shared risks, and then how we can do everything together. And all of these are included within this water stewardship framework or principles. Now, with other standard, we had the opportunity also in Indonesia to also benchmark between the water stewardship and the government standard. For example, it's called proper in Indonesia, and then we also try to benchmark with other standard from RSPO, for example, and then also with the guideline of the GPSNR. So we saw that there is an overlapping, but with the water stewardship, the important thing is that we have a very a thorough and comprehensive view of all the indicators related to the water management, but also on the geographical area, we focus on the catchment. So this is not what is not, I think, what does not exist in the other standard. So other standard, maybe they have a lot of indicators also, but they are focusing on only specific in the indicators, and then on the implementation they are focusing on also sometimes on the only on the operational side, while the water stewardship is not. We are going beyond the fence, we are going for the catchment. This is I think the main difference with the other standards. And this is important because we have to put everything in what we do, our sustainability effort and everything into a context, and to understand that context, this is how water stewardship comes in. Thank you.
Thank you, Mas Fanny. So yeah, I think I'm concerning about time. So I will turn to our next speaker, Mr. Marcus. So his company's Planet Net Zero Earth is currently operating in Vietnam. So would like you to, Marcus, I would like to hear a little bit from you of your experience, of your maybe you can you introduce a little bit about your company and share with us a little bit about the business experience in Vietnam in terms of like the water management, the context in Vietnam of a business operating in Vietnam.
Yeah, thank you very much, Ms. Han. And also thank you for the organizers, Auscham and Water Stewardship, to give me the opportunity to share a little bit about our experience in terms of water operating as a business in Vietnam. Maybe I will quickly go through a few slides of our company, what we are doing, what is our background, why is it related to water, and what are our issues and challenges. So basically our company focuses on the decarbonization, which is a big topic right now. It also includes energy and water as well. So that's why it's relevant for us. Next slide, please. We do a lot of consultancy work, especially focusing on the greenhouse gas emissions, carbon footprint calculations, as well as the strategy to reduce those greenhouse gas emissions, which also covers water issues, but also how to deal and how to manage water. Next slide, please. We also do technical training on these kind of topics, especially greenhouse gas inventories, but also general topics like environmental awareness. So we have issues like single-use plastic, energy conservation, but also water conservation, and how does it relate to climate change? And we're raising the awareness, and I think we had previously already in one of the discussions, presentations today, the lack of understanding or interest in those topics, and that's very, very important. Education awareness is one of our major, out dear to our heart. We want to share the information and spread the knowledge as well. Next slide, please. So one of our main aspects for decarbonization is turning organic waste into biochar, which captures the carbon, CO2 into a very solid material, which we then can apply in different applications. And on the next slide, you can see how we put this all in an overall concept, where we use our concept water to carbon as a means to clean water, wastewater in a very nature-based solution way, also generating biomass, which we then can turn into biochar. And biochar itself can be used for cleaning of wastewater as well. Is low tech, is low cost, and it's also easy to implement in decentralized areas. So furthering the different areas of catchment areas, this could be implemented locally in a smaller scale. So this is one of the aspects for water management. Next slide, please. Where we have all the wastewater treatment plant generating sewage sludge. So taking care of the water resource also generates another type of waste, sewage sludge, and the sewage sludge is usually, depending on the manufacturing or the wastewater treatment plant, will be organic and also can be turned into biochar or a char-like structure. And therefore, we have a management reducing certain greenhouse gas emissions, and we are cleaning and taking care of that the wastewater as well as the overall process from the wastewater treatment plant is more sustainable and environmentally friendly. So this is basically in short terms what we are doing. Maybe on the next slide. And in all these kind of projects, ourselves, but also our clients are facing quite a number of different challenges. One of the major challenges is the limited infrastructure. We are talking about missing infrastructure. Wastewater treatment plants are not everywhere. They may not be working properly in a way that is intended to do. So the quality of the effluent is not as good as it should be. It might not fully comply with the requirements, not at all the times. And of course, we are talking about technologies which may not be readily available in Vietnam from Vietnamese suppliers, so need to be imported from overseas. And therefore, we have issues in terms of maintenance as well, because spare parts or proper servicing is not available. So that's the technology and the infrastructure problems in a way we see a lot with our clients. On the other side, we have done financial constraints. Currently, the financial situation overall in the world, also in Vietnam, is always challenging. And therefore, there is not enough budget for certain activities, for investment into better infrastructure, for upgrading facilities. And therefore, this infrastructure problem appears further. We have limited awareness of certain funding and access options. There is a variety of programs which support the implementation of new technologies, but they are sometimes very strict, very niche, and not everybody is aware of. So access to those funds, green finance is a big topic. So how do I get investors interested in my project, in my operations? Information may not be available to satisfy those requirements. So there's a lack or a mismatch in expectations and possibilities. One of the other things we are seeing is water as a service. We see the development with rooftop solar, PV panel, where you have someone investing into the PV panel, and then the local factory or company will buy the electricity generated. And we see an approach into the same direction. We take care of your wastewater and you pay a monthly fee for cleaning the wastewater. So this is something which is now being pushed in certain areas. We are also pushing for this. However, it's not widely implemented yet. And of course, on the other side, we see that water is offered on a relatively cheap price. And therefore, the necessity financially is not pushing to save money, to save the water, to save money, which is usually a driver. The price of the water is usually a driver to invest into saving water in a factory or in a company. Next slide, please. Oh. Next slide. Thank you. And on the other side, of course, the companies are all working within a regulatory framework, and this is ever changing. While Vietnam is a very dynamic market, there is some areas we have a lack of regulation. Some items, some issues are not regulated yet. Some have a framework already, but there are no details available regarding the how approval can be obtained, how interpretation, what are the requirements, so how to apply, what are the information need to be provided. So there is an uncertainty. It's not always straightforward, and authorities may not be willing to implement new innovative or approve new innovative approaches because there is a regulation for the old approach, which is not really best practice maybe anymore. So there's a mismatch, and some other items like reuse of treated wastewater is actually prohibited, although there are some industrial parks, some manufacturers pushing into the direction. But of course, that needs to be in cooperation with the local authorities because they need to approve it. Next slide, please. Yeah, there should be another one, but before that, I had 3 slides. Okay, never mind. Another aspect I wanted to highlight, and I think I didn't put it on the slides anyway, was the issue about climate change. Because the climate change, as we have seen, the droughts and so on, we have been, as Vietnam is very much affected by the climate change, especially Mekong Delta with saltwater intrusion and so on. So there's really a heavy pressure on the businesses as well as about talking about water availability, use water, what Mr. Fanny also mentioned, there's water available, but it's not suitable for the application. So that's the same issues we are dealing with in Vietnam as well.
Thank you, Marcus. Just quick questions first to Marcus, and maybe Fanny and Megan, you can also address it a bit. So because businesses in Vietnam are kind of concerning more about carbon emission. So like what is that has thing to do with kind of managing water? Does water management helps with reducing carbon emission as well? Or like, do they have to kind of do both of the things separately, and that would kind of have to like increase the cost quite significantly for businesses?
No, that's a combination. Megan, maybe you can go back to one of the slides with the overview for the concepts. Yes, thank you. Not one more. Back. Yes, thank you. Because it's always exactly this one. It's a combination. So it's a bit complex, but it's a combination. So treating wastewater avoids generation of methane, nitrox oxide, as well as if you're using nature-based solution, the plants will absorb CO2, will absorb the carbon. And then in our concept, we will harvest the bamboo or the water plants and then can turn it into biochar, and therefore we capture the CO2. So this is actually a good combination, and with a biochar, you have an additional product you actually can sell, which will also help to get additional revenue and make it easier for the business case of the overall concept. And also for the next slide, maybe back to the sewage sludge. Normally, one of the possible uses of sewage sludge is either in the agriculture when it's used for fertilization. However, we have also there the issues with nitrox oxide and methane generation, as well as if there's the sewage sludge is going to a landfill, we have those issues. And methane is 21 times more potent than carbon actually, and therefore generating a lot to the greenhouse gas effect. And by treating those and making sure the water is safe and properly treated and taken care of, you also avoid those greenhouse gas emissions, reducing your own carbon footprint of the operations of the old company. So it's a win-win.
Thank you.
Can I add to that, Ms. Han?
Yes, please.
Yeah, I think right now we know that the carbon credit is the focus of many companies. But I think in the near futures there is going to be a water credit also is going to be a, because right now if you see there are many also who are already on the path of supporting uh, the government, supporting the community in doing this water replenishment program. And I think when we also do something for water, I think there is also, as Mr. Marcus also explained, there is also a possibility on we can also get this carbon credit at the same time. So it's a win-win solution. But in the near future, I think this water credit will be another initiative that will be at the same level with the carbon credit. Right now, it's not regulated fully by many governments, but I think it's coming. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Fanny. So with that, I would like to introduce to you a little bit about the project and the background of the project. So Megan, can you go through the challenges in Vietnam? So the challenges in Vietnam is shared by many countries like Australia, Indonesia, and many others. In Vietnam, there's kind of increase of the industrial development and population, which comes with the greater demands for water. But the water situation in Vietnam is that you have the kind of flood in the rainy season, and you don't, like many areas don't have enough, many areas don't have enough water access during dry season. And in Mekong Delta, there's other problems like salinity or water quality problems. So water quality problems, so like even access to water at household level is limited. So yeah, so that's why we want to kind of like bring the water stewardship framework to come to Vietnam to see how we can engage businesses and other stakeholders in this conversation in a more engaging way, at a kind of like a smaller scale way. So next slide, please. So the usual steps for business or any organizations of like doing the water stewardship journey, you start with your area, your operating site. Okay, so companies or organization could start with like increasing your water efficiency or treating the water so that it's come out clean to the river, for example. But that's the basic step. The next step is to kind of understand the landscape, your environment a little bit better, to see the water that you're using, what are the potential risks such as drought, pollution, or flood. So there's a different kind of water risk that comes within the area that you live in, and this kind of like awareness helps you to manage the risk better. And it's not only your site, but many companies with supply chain that lies in areas with high water risk need to kind of see what potentially affect the organizations in the future. So the next step would be to plan planning or improving the water security by working with different stakeholders and engaged in collective actions for like a better solution, more cost-effective solution as well. So Marcus talked a little bit about the cost to do any technology in Vietnam, and that's shared by many businesses in Vietnam, is because it costs too much. And so like collective actions is something that helps business and community to share that cost, and the local government as well, to kind of trying to find a solution that fits for many stakeholders, and kind of achieving the common goal. Okay, so the project itself focusing on like building that understanding of water, share water challenges of stakeholders within kind of like the Vietnam context, and also within like a certain boundary geographically. So in this project, we have like 4 main activities. Today's is webinar series, so part of the webinar series, others including the site mapping, catchment analysis, and the workshop in April. Next slide, please. So with site mapping, we mapped the location of the people that interest in joining the workshop in April to see where their organization or the supply chain or value chain is located in Vietnam. So people that joining in the workshop for learning about the water risks and challenges in Vietnam, we're trying to see where the area, the basin, the catchment, the water area that their organization's based. And so we mapped that onto the Vietnam geographic map, but within the different catchments. So catchments like the river area, to see which river they belong to. For example, here you can see that many organizations that expressed interest lies in Dong Nai River basin and the Thai Ban River in the north. Next slide, please. And with the with that information, we identifying a pilot site for us to do a catchment analysis. So the catchment analysis would have information such as the catchment profile, technology solution, catchment library, and tools box. So it kind of brings together the information of that water area. So for people who joining the workshop, they can learn about that the general challenges that business facing in Vietnam and also in that particular area. Next slide, please. So for example, like Renmark, I'm taking an example here, like if we are picking Ho Chi Minh City as the pilot site, you can see that like Ho Chi Minh City is taking water from Saigon or Dong Nai River. And then we're looking, okay, what are the challenges? What are the priorities, planning, different actions that happened, and the stakeholders involved within the scope of like within the boundary of Ho Chi Minh City. The stakeholders that we engage with, the locals, governments, businesses, etc. So that's kind of like we use that as a pilot for if we are choosing Ho Chi Minh City, then that would be the information that we're presenting to the participants. Next slide, please. So yes, so we have this information from the catchment analysis, which we use in the workshops to go through like the water risk and water challenges, the climate risk, ESG aspect, and also the water sanitation and hygiene. So that's the kind of information that we will like have this conversation in the workshop and bring people together to discuss on these issues. So next slide, please. Yes, so the workshop we plan to have in early April, so first week of April. There will be plenary discussions where we have representatives from different business chambers and ministries in Vietnam to come and discuss about like what like business and government and different stakeholders can work on the current water challenges in Vietnam. Well, we also have like kind of facilitated session for stakeholders to go through different steps of the water stewardship standards and kind of trying to work together with the case studies of the pilot catchment analysis site to come up with like a solution that works for many people. So the workshop will be in person. Yes, so the workshop will be in person, and participants who participate the full 2 days workshop will receive a certificate from Water Stewardship Asia Pacific. Okay, so for the participant today, you can scan the QR code to. We will send also the webinar presentation to you after this we end the webinar, and yes, you can also click on the link inside the PowerPoint, but you can also scan the QR code and register your interest to join the workshop in April. I noticed that we're running out of time, but if you want to stay, maybe, I'd like to ask a few questions to our panelists here. I have a question from Van about involving the vulnerable communities, engaging vulnerable communities in water stewardship. So Megan, do you want to take that question?
Yes, thanks. And hopefully it might have been answered a little bit in some of the further information about the process where we identify the business stakeholders that we're working with and engaging with, and the area or the catchment or the location that we're working in. And then an important part of the water stewardship process is identifying water-related stakeholders, whether that's from a water balance or water supply, water quality, environmental stakeholders and ecological, water sanitation and hygiene, with a strong focus on vulnerable and marginalised groups. So we're really wanting to gather and understand and identify the challenges that affect all water users and stakeholders within a catchment, with a particular focus on those that may otherwise not be heard or marginalised or vulnerable. To gain that big picture and then understanding the key priorities and challenges, that then helps businesses and organisations to focus their action and initiatives and investment in water action and improvement and addressing those water risks and challenges. So going back to the definition of water stewardship, it is a stakeholder inclusive process, and it really means that by engaging that broad range of water related stakeholders.
Yes, thank you, Megan. I think that's all the questions we have addressed already. So thank you. Yes.
I think there's a question on the about the workshop. Is it online or offline? Maybe you'd like to answer that.
Yes, I already answered that. So that would be in person in Vietnam, but we will consider if we would do like a hybrid event, if there's interest from people from like more physical, cannot come physically. So we'll consider that. But yeah, we're trying to have the workshop in person. Yeah, so thank you everyone for joining today's webinar. We will keep you updated with the upcoming workshop next week or so. So yeah, we'll send you a follow-up email with the recording of today's session as well as information for future events.
Thank you all for joining, and especially thank you to the lovely speakers who shared very in-depth insights. Even though this is a lesser known concept, I think it can have universal applications to help communities in Vietnam and in the region to better manage their water resources. So as we are approaching Tết holiday, I wish everyone a new year full of good health and meaningful achievements. We look forward to have your engagement in water stewardship's upcoming activities. Have a productive rest of the day, and I hope to be in touch with you all. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Ausjam also to facilitate this. Thank you.